Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here in the home weather office with another detailed Atlantic hurricane seasonal forecast updated for May 23rd, 2024. We're going to be looking at the NOAA's hurricane outlook, and we're going to be looking at a lot of other agencies that do predict a hyperactive Atlantic hurricane season. So to kick off the Atlantic hurricane seasonal forecast outlook and discussion, here's a look at the latest GOES 16 true color visible satellite imagery provided by Dr. Levi Cowan at tropicaltidbits.com. And we have two disturbances that we are watching in the Atlantic, and one of them is really hard to make out, but we're going to still focus on our first one here just to the north of Hispaniola, the Dominican Republic, and the southeastern Bahamas in the southwestern Atlantic, where we do have some enhanced showers and thunderstorm activity. We do have a weak surface low underneath all of this, very elongated, really disorganized, nothing to speak of, but just wanted to bring that out to you all that there is some showers and some thunderstorms, some flood concerns with this area of disturbed weather. We also have another area of disturbed weather just to the south of north 10 degrees in latitude. All right, so this is where it's at. See my laser pointer? And this is moving due west at about 5 to 15 miles an hour. This does not have any chances of development at all because the background state is not favorable with a lot of wind shear, drier air aloft on top of this. So nothing to be concerned about that, but just thought I wanted to talk about that briefly since there is a little bit of a naked swirl there on the visible satellite imagery. So now we're going to get into the thickest meat part of this discussion on the Atlantic hurricane seasonal forecast. So first off, looking at the latest coral reef watch sea surface temperatures created by cyclonicwx.com. There will also be a link in the description below this video. And we already have significant warming taking place in the Atlantic. And if we follow the 26 degree isotherm, that's this yellow color kind of divided by the lime green color, that is already north of 25 degrees north in latitude. Usually it's down here at roughly 20 degrees north in latitude. So the further north this gets, the warmer the sea surface temperatures are actually able to warm up down here in the Caribbean. So right now the Gulf, very warm, upper 70, mid 80 sea surface temperatures, especially over the Bay of Campeche. And if we go into the Caribbean, we have sea surface temperatures there in the low to mid 80s. And then when you get out here in the main development region, this is where we have sea surface temperatures that are already in the low to mid 80s. So very warm for this time of the year. And these sea surface temperatures are not usually seen until late July into mid-August. So we're well ahead of schedule as far as how warm the Atlantic actually is. So when we take a look at our sea surface temperature anomaly, very warm. In the Gulf of Mexico, you can clearly see we have water temperatures there that are anywhere between about 1 degree Celsius to as warm as 3 Celsius in some of these areas like the Florida Panhandle. We also have some areas of 3 Celsius over the Bay of Campeche in the southern Gulf of Mexico. And even in the northwestern Gulf, we have water temperatures that are very warm. Not only that, if we take a look at the Caribbean, we have water temperatures that are nearly about 1 degree to 2 degrees Celsius above the long-term average. And in the main development region, this is where we have water temperatures that are sufficiently warm to support very intense hurricanes once we get into the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season. And again, this really warm look to the Atlantic, what we call our AMO, Atlantic Mercadial Oscillation, something like that, or multi-decadal oscillation. There's many words to say. Warm horseshoe shape with cooler waters up in the northwestern Atlantic here off the northeast coast really support analogs for a very busy Atlantic hurricane season, likely for a hyperactive one that I'm about to show you here in a little bit from our agencies, including myself. So sea surface temperature anomaly in greater detail, it does clearly show that there are pockets here of 2.5, 3 Celsius waters above normal, even along the coast here of the Yucatan Peninsula in the Bay of Campeche. We have sea surface temperature anomalies of about 2 to 3 Celsius and really warm shelf waters here in the southern portion of Florida, even Tampa Bay, if you're in Cape Coral, Key West, seeing sea surface temperatures of around 2 to 3 Celsius above average. Now, shelf waters are able to mix out well, so even so these are very warm, these can cool down very quickly, but it is important to take note that we're really far above average for this time of the year, and there's only a couple of areas in the Gulf left that are at least average for the time being, but those two could recover very quickly since we have our loop current that is somewhere in this area. So these waters are able to warm up very quickly if they cool down briefly. So actual sea surface temperatures, again, there are a couple of areas here other than what we looked at on cyclonic wx.com that only showed about 29 or so Celsius because that's not as high of a resolution map. This is from the University of Miami, and we do have waters in the island of Youth here in the Bay of Youth in western Cuba that are already 31 to 32 Celsius. We got 31 Celsius waters across the southern portion of the Florida coast, and we have really warm water temperatures across the Bay of Campeche. Why I'm talking about sea surface temperatures in this video also is because what this means for the Atlantic hurricane season. The upper ocean heat content is also at record territory, something that we have not witnessed at all in modern era records. This is very, very concerning for what the season could end up looking like once these systems, if they take full advantage of the upper ocean heat content. And right now, just throughout the entire Caribbean, we're looking at substantial numbers here, well into the record book territory, with some instances here of some deep purples. That is way up here on the chart as far as how far above average we are with upper ocean heat content. And even over here in the central Gulf, we're way off the charts here in terms of upper ocean heat content anomaly. Again, reds, orange, and purple colors illustrate that upper ocean heat content is above the climatological mean average, okay? And this means we just have extra heat to use up for this season. So now we're going to be comparing the upper ocean heat content with past years, especially dating all the way back to 2018 with those busy years that began really in 2017. We can't go that far back, but we can do what we can here in the video. So we're going to compare images, and this is very important because this season does not compare to any other seasons that you are seeing here. So 2018, we had very modest amounts of upper ocean heat content, not record-wise at all, slightly above average for the time of the year in 2018 in May 23rd, by the way. There's a date on the top. There's a year. Make sure you look for that carefully. And as we go into 2019, it gets a little higher. In 2020, it continues to go up. Now, I want to be clear here. This gave us 30 plus named storms. So assuming that our upper ocean heat content looks like this year, right? Which it's not, it's higher than this. This gave us 30 name storms. Okay, this was in May 23rd, 2020. This was 4 years ago. Let's go to 2021 on May the 24th. Definitely lower that year, right? We didn't have as much in the way of upper ocean heat content early in the season. 2022, pretty similar numbers. Really not high as far as upper ocean heat content goes, which is good news, right? For what that season looked like. Really did not end up being all that bad compared to 2020. 2023, it came up quite dramatically, especially in the northwestern Caribbean, where we had some really high numbers this time of the year on May 24th, 2023. But guess what? This year is far more worse than any other year that we've ever experienced. This is truly historic. All right, let's take a look now at 2024. Look at how much higher we are in terms of upper ocean heat content, not just in the northwestern Caribbean, but look at the Gulf of Mexico, the loop current, really high. So there are some notable areas that I'm circling in here. First of all, in the central Gulf and in the northwestern portion of the Caribbean, and especially over here and even down here where we have really high upper ocean heat content on a historic level. something that we have not witnessed at all since modern records began, okay? Or since modern satellite era really dates back to the 1800s, perhaps. This is very alarming, and I don't like saying this to cause fear, hype, or fear-mongering by any sense. I'm not here to cause that. This alone does not lead to extremely active hurricane seasons. I want to be clear with that. Okay, this is not a producer in major hurricanes. What this is octane fuel for hurricanes. So if the background state favors a major hurricane with very little shear, lots of moisture in the deep layer, and we get a tropical wave that moves into these areas with very high upper ocean heat content, hurricanes tend to go crazy because there's a lot of heat energy being stored deep into the ocean, not just at the surface. This goes all the way down to even 1,000 feet below the surface of the water. So you nosedive, you take a submarine down to 1,000 feet, you could still find 80-degree Fahrenheit waters. And that from that level all the way up to the surface, that equates to how much upper ocean heat content you have. So the higher the numbers here, not only the deeper the 80-degree isotherm goes, but the more heat energy you have for hurricanes this season. And if we compare from 2020 to this year, man, this year, without a doubt, is significantly higher by all standards. Even to the north here, this is very far north and very far east with the whole progression and how the leading edge of these numbers here. If we go back to 2020 really quickly, look at it. That gave us 30 named storms. This could give us even more. I don't like saying that, but it's not looking good at all, and I'll show you the NOAA forecast, and I'm going to show you all the agencies here in just a little bit. So again, here's the upper ocean heat content like we just talked about. This is from the University of Miami. Again, 3 notable areas that have really high numbers, including the loop current up here, very significant. Almost off the charts if you're in Jamaica, if you're on the Cayman Island, there's a little Cayman Island right there. Don't want to forget you all. Very high upper ocean heat content, and I'm sure you all are feeling the water down there, and it is super warm, very, very warm for this time of the year. So now, what can give us a very busy season? And a lot of you are probably wondering about that. Well, our sea surface temperature configuration tells us a lot on what might end up happening. It doesn't, forecast is very different than what actually happened, right? We can base it off of past analog data. So 2005 gave us a very busy season. Even so, we did not have a really strong La Nina at the time. In May, we had a really warm main development region. Sea surface temperatures here easily topped 2-3 Celsius above normal, with a very warm north central Atlantic basin and this kind of weak horseshoe teleconnection pattern, what we call the AMO, was in place. Also a rather warm PMM, which is Pacific Meridional Mode, something like that. Hope I got that correctly. Little tongue twister there. But what we have this year, what I'm about to show you, is very different. So this gave us 28 named storms. This gave us 30 plus named storms. Okay, so this is 2020. And take note of the developing La Nina. This happened more in the Central Pacific. This time around, it's really developing in the Eastern Pacific that you're about to see. But most importantly, look at how warm the Atlantic was. And get this, this was only about a half degree to 2 Celsius 1 degree Celsius, there, above average for May 21st, 2020. And yet, this gave us 30 plus named storms. Okay, I want to be clear about that. If this can give us 30 named storms plus, what is this going to give us? Take a look at 2023 or 2024. Boom. Very, very significant. For one thing, we have a really well-defined negative PMM, Pacific Meridional pattern that is in place, or meridional flow. Meridional mode. There we go. Ooh, man, tongue twister names here. I hope you guys laugh at me about that. Yeah, some of these scientific names are a bit hard to pronounce, but you get the idea. Okay, so very cold up here. Take note of that. A developing cold Enso pattern that is developing in the Eastern Pacific. And this one is more easterly weighted than what we had in 2020, which is really helping out what might end up happening this season. But really, what really catches my eye is just how warm the Atlantic really is. The main development region is 2 degrees, 3 degrees Celsius above average. There are some anomalies in here that are 3 Celsius above the long-term average. This is an anomaly. This is not, oh, 3 Celsius, that's cold. No, this is departure from normal. So when you get orange colors here over the Atlantic, this usually illustrates well above average sea surface temperatures. And then we have, again, this really well-defined horseshoe shape that is showing up very well on the sea surface temperature anomaly map. And this is why we are very confident we're going to have a very busy, hyperactive Atlantic extraordinary season. All right, we are going to get more than 20 named storms. That is a guarantee, okay? Because again, with such of these sea surface temperatures, negative here, plus here, very warm in the Gulf of Mexico. So if we get any storms that move this direction and they move into the Gulf, these are going to fly very intensely and very quickly once they get closer to land. So not looking good, unfortunately. I wish I could be here with all the good news, folks, and that we only will have 5 to 10 named storms. It's not looking like that this year. Nothing really speaks for a very quiet season. Everything just leads me in the direction that we're going to have a very big problem ahead of us. So now, another way to back that up with evidence is the North American Multi-Model Ensemble forecast. This is kind of a super blend of every model that we can think of, putting it into a multi-model ensemble forecast. And this is the May output recently, predicting very far above average anomalous precipitation. Now, a lot of you that are up here in the Northern Gulf don't think that, oh, we're not going to get a lot of named storms turning that way. We might avoid some U.S. landfalls this year. Maybe a lot of the storms will just go directly into, say, Mexico. But there is an air forecast to this map that you have, okay, that we see. Certainly, it does cover at least some areas that could have above average precipitation, which means some of these hurricanes might track this way, they might turn in this way, or they might just go out to sea. But also, another way to put this in perspective, below average anomalous is predicted on this model as of the May forecast for Bermuda, which means this Azores height out here is going to be stronger. We're going to get a lot of these tropical waves that move more west than usual, and then they might want to turn into the Gulf of Mexico and then might recurve out along the eastern seaboard. That is why this season could be very costly if it all ends up as what models do predict. But very far above average here. A very active season is ahead of us. Even so, it's quiet now. We are not going to end up with any May development. Don't think that, oh, it's a quiet May, that means it's going to be quiet in June. The Madden-Julian oscillation is all behind this season that is really quiet so far in May, and it's because of a lot of the sinking motion that I'm about to show you. The CANSIPS is also on board with this, very far above average. I mean, this is really on the 90th percentile in the Central Caribbean, so very far. A lot of tropical wave activity. The monsoon gyre is going to be very active this year. We're going to have a lot of tropical waves that skirt across here, and look at even the eastern seaboard and the Gulf of Mexico, including Florida, really need to be watching out closely this coming hurricane season, because this model does show a whole different picture than what the North American Multi-Model Ensemble is showing. The CANSIPS and this is for August, September, and October, by the way. So the peak of hurricane season, this is September, October, November. As we close out the season, during the second half of the season, we start to kind of lose and we get below average up there. But again, This is really far out in time, and it's like predicting a needle in the haystack where it's going to land in a square mile bale of hay, right? You can't predict very far out. You could only get the signals that do tell us on what might end up happening based on what we see here. And right now, very busy, well into November, perhaps might even finish the calendar year with a few named storms in December. Doesn't surprise me with such a season that we're seeing right now. The Climate Forecasting System version 2 model is also illustrating a lot of above average precipitation in the deep tropics here, including for portions of Florida and the Gulf Coast. So everything lines up. Now, we're not going without those models. We're looking at the European model, the ECMWF, the European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecasting. This is also predicting an exceptionally very busy season, an extraordinary Atlantic hurricane season for the deep tropics. This is off the charts. This is 70 to 100% times the climatological mean in this area of the tropics. So here is South America, here's Africa. Hopefully you guys can see that very well here. And all these greens do illustrate above average precipitation. That could be in the form of more tropical waves than usual. Those can give seedlings to tropical storms or hurricanes, if not major hurricanes. In other words, above average in this area. Also, much of Africa, the equatorial area, the Sahel region, as well as the West African monsoon jet is going to be very active this year, and that's going to lead to a lot of tropical cyclone genesis. Once these systems move off of Africa and they get into the Caribbean, things could go downhill very quickly. And that's what this is predicting, with a very active MJO event likely to emerge in June. Okay, this continues for August, September, and October. So, by the way, July, August, September. So, and then we go into August, September, October. Still above average, like I said. Very active West African monsoon jet. Lots of tropical waves coming off of Africa. That is a guarantee. Therefore, the ECMWF has upped their average of named storms versus a climatological mean. Earlier, in the last update, it was 21 named storms that were predicted by the ECMWF. Now that number has crawled to now 23 named storms. Okay, you can see the green bar here illustrating how high that is. And the orange area, based on the Euro, is now predicting a 5% significant on the de-revolution deviation standard here, which means we could have up to perhaps 30 named storms, what the ECMWF is now predicting. Potentially between 20 to 30 named storms. We could see between 14, then this is the normal. Climate mean is 14 and a half named storms. That's about 15 named storms, and we're doubling that this year, according to what the ECMWF predicts. All right, so that's kind of look at what the Euro is showing as far as that goes. The hurricane numbers also very high, 13 named storms we're looking at, and that's again almost double the climatological mean. And now when we look at the North Atlantic hurricane frequency forecast with their past forecasts going all the way back to 1992, the blue line illustrates the forecast, okay, when it was released in May, the observations on what that season ended up being, and the green line is the plus or minus one number standard deviation. So this year especially is off the charts. We can see we're all the way up to a 13. Now, of course, when you look at this, this is above any other season that this model did predict. All right, we remember what 2010 ended up. It was a pretty active season, but look at what the Euro is predicting this season. Predicting the highest it has ever issued a forecast dating back to 1992 with up to perhaps 16 to 17 hurricanes. That is alarming. And that is also the highest it has ever been on record. So that's why I am very concerned of what is to come If you're seeing this from one of the best or the best global computer model ever, a climate model, this really tells a lot. This is an eye-opener, and I'm not saying this again to cause fear, hype, or mongering, but look at the data for yourself. You can go to the ECMWF website. I will have a link in the description below this video to that, and this is going to clearly show you just how busy this season could actually end up being. It could give us up to almost 17 hurricanes, and with up to perhaps maybe even 30 named storms. That is a outside possibility, unfortunately. Therefore, now when we look at, this is a new map, so I'm not using my old agency seasonal forecast. We're actually going to use this. This is quite an awesome weather, or a very awesome website to predict how many named storms. And guess what? I am now included into this forecast. They have approved my forecast. I still predict 24 to 30 named storms. North Carolina State University predicts 15 to 20 named storms. And when we go over to Penn State, still predicting 27 to 39 named storms with an average mean of 33 storms predicted. That is very alarming. That is as bullish of a forecast you could actually get. Nothing beats that, okay? With 26 weather or WX predicting 21 to 35 named storms. You could go and look at this website. There will also be a link in the description below this video. And anything roughly above 28 named storms is considered extreme. So there are a few agencies here, more than a few, that are predicting an extreme Atlantic hurricane season output. The number of hurricanes predicted, I am forecasting 11 to 16 hurricanes, whereas the UK Met Office is predicting 8 to 16 hurricanes. The European model predicting 9 to 16 hurricanes, and there's a few out there. Weatherbell is predicting 14 to 16 hurricanes. That is off the charts. That is an exceptional season. And 268 WX predicting 8 to 18 hurricanes. Again, you can find more on this with the link in the description. The number of major hurricanes that are forecasted, I'm predicting 6 to 11 major hurricanes, 4 to 10 on 268 WX. Weatherbell is predicting up to 8 major hurricanes. UK Met Office 2 to 6. Earthworks 5 to 7. But there's one agency that we cannot forget. And again, this is from the Colorado State University. So I hope you guys like that map very much. They are predicting 23 named storms. And I want to be clear, the ACE producing points here are very concerning. Okay, accumulated cyclone energy of 210 is forecasted. That is double the amount for a given season. Almost double the amount, because if you think about it, we're usually about 125 is the general average. We're going to be well above that. We could even top that. Some agencies are predicting up to 350 ACE points. That is, I mean, that's as high as you can potentially go with an active season like what we're seeing. So there are some wild outcomes with this. And again, they're predicting 11 hurricanes. They are predicting 5 major major hurricanes. And number of named storms are predicting 23. So you can see it right here. And again, that's above the climatological average of 14.4, 7.2. And I mean, everything here is above average. This is not a good sign that you want to even end up seeing. Now, there's another agency that we like to look at, and this is from NOAA. This is the 2024 Atlantic Hurricane Season 4 Outlook, fresh off the press from their National Hurricane Conference that was debuted today at about 10 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. They are predicting 17 to 25 named storms, 8 to 13 hurricanes. That is a very bullish forecast and is the highest they have ever issued a May forecast, by the way. So this is not what you want to hear. Major hurricanes, we're looking at 4 to 7, and there is an 85% chance that this season will end up being above average, with a 10% of a near normal season. So all in all, there's roughly about a 95% chance that this season will end up somewhat above average, with at least a 5% chance that there is a below average season, which I do not think is even on the docket. No one has even mentioned words about it being below average, so technically that could almost be 0. But all you need to know is how many named storms, and 17 to 25 named storms is an awfully bullish forecast given their first outlook that they have released in late May here. This is the highest May forecast that they have ever issued. So now, I know this is a really long discussion, but this really needs to cover all the bread and butter on what will give us a busy season. One of those is the MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation. This image, I grabbed this image yesterday with some overlays that I added onto this. Green colors usually indicate favorable environment, whereas red colors indicate unfavorable conditions. So right now, the MJO is expected to move into an unfavorable environment for the Atlantic, so the continuation of sinking motion is anticipated. Now, if this is able to crawl very quickly back into phase 1, we could end up seeing an uptick in tropical activity. That is to be announced once we get to that point. But right now, it is in a fairly favorable environment for tropical cyclone formation right now in the Atlantic, with the GEFS model also on board with the Euro, indicating we're going to right now in a favorable environment briefly, and then that's going to deteriorate as we move into a more unfavorable conditions. Actually, one could even argue that due to a convective coupled Kelvin wave happening in the Western Pacific, in fact, this might be an understatement that the conditions actually in the Atlantic are technically conditionally unfavorable, then relatively speaking, with what the MJO RMM phase diagram actually shows. So another way to look at this is the forecast, which is on the right side. So I want to make that clear. Right side is the forecast MJO. On the left side is the what this means for the May through September precipitation output on the MJO phase. I know this is hard to explain, but simply green areas indicate more upward motion, more rain, more shower and thunderstorm activity, whereas browner colors indicate more sinking motion. So another way to put this into perspective is I made some boxes, if you can see that very clearly. Pink colors indicate a lot of sinking motion, whereas darker green colors indicate a lot of rising motion. So right now, over the next 5 to 10 days, the Atlantic is not going to be open up for business. It may not be until at least the first or second week of June when things do look to open up in the Atlantic with more favorable conditions likely there, with more upward motion, more thunderstorm, more tropical wave activity developing in the central Atlantic, even in the central Caribbean, by the second or third week of June. So this time around, it's going to be in June, not in May. And that means August and September are likely to be very active. Now, what does this mean as far as the phase diagram? You can see what it typically means in phases. 5, 6, and 7 are typically the most unfavorable for the Atlantic, versus phase 2, 3, maybe even 4, and even phase 1 typically favor an increase in tropical wave activity there because of the upward and downward motion. We're now moving into an area of favorability in terms of the MJO that is really amplifying right now over the Indian Ocean, over Indonesia, with lower than normal sea level pressures there. So we can see in the green areas here on the ECMWF, EPS, which is Ensemble Prediction System, does forecast that we're going to have a favorable environment in the Atlantic from about the 6th of June all the way down to the end of June, possibly into early July. And this could be troubling because this is not even the peak of hurricane season yet, and we could start off June kind of in June on a fairly active note. Take note, greener areas are rising motion, redder colors are sinking motion. We can see a lot of the sinking motion is going to favor much of the Pacific during this time frame versus the Atlantic. Because of the warm sea surface temperatures, a lot of that upward motion is going to be able to amplify a little bit more than usual because of a lot of latent heat release. All right, now there's a couple announcements. Don't go anywhere, folks. I know this, you've been patiently waiting for this video to probably end. This is probably going to be one of the longest Atlantic hurricane seasonal outlook and discussions ever on the channel, but there was some very volatile information that I wanted to share with you all. So what am I going to be providing Okay, so again, it says down there, what will I be presenting during my routine tropical weather outlooks? There's more than this, by the way. So, of course, we will be providing satellite imagery. You saw that already. You already saw that I do provide my graphical tropical weather outlooks from the National Hurricane Center. And when there is a named storm that we track, there will be a cone of uncertainty that we'll be providing. And, of course, the numerical models of uncertainty that we will also be providing to wind shear forecasts and much more, including tail Doppler radar missions when a system is ongoing, such as Hurricane Lee. This was from last year. Hurricane Lee being a beast in the Atlantic, being the only Category 5 hurricane in at least a few years that we actually, in a few years, something like that. So this is what I will be providing. There's more than just what you see here, by the way. So during my routine tropical weather outlooks, I will be providing life-saving and easy to understand information. Pause the video if you wish, okay? Please pause this and read this all through. There's so much to digest that I don't want to read everything because this video will end up much longer than it should be. It's unnecessary for me to read everything here, but just note that there is some volatile information that I will be providing during the season once it really kicks off in June. Terms of conditions, please read these very closely. Again, pause the video if you wish. But what I will say is do not attempt to copyright anything that you see in this video. Do not re-upload this video for any reason or my future videos on your channel unless I give you permission to do so. So if you come and ask me, hey, can I upload your video on my channel? If I say yes, then that's good. If I say no, you cannot. All right. So just don't do that. Please have full respect because of course, that's the whole part of this Atlantic hurricane season is providing as much life-saving information as we can. But anyways, be sure to share this video with your family and friends. If you did enjoy today's detailed hurricane outlook, hurricane seasonal forecast and discussion, this will probably be my last seasonal forecast. Maybe I'll have one more sometime in June or July. I'm not sure when. So be sure you do share this with your family and friends on social media because this is the latest information that we did provide you in today's discussion. But otherwise, share, like, and subscribe, leave a comment in the section below, and check out the links that I did provide in today's video. Anyways, I'll be back with you more tomorrow with another detailed update on the tropics.